For what it's worth, I am 100% supportive of fiat currency relations, and I believe that a strong central bank is a necessity to prevent currency speculation by the wealthy. I would prefer to abolish currency and property altogether, but so long as we are stuck with currency, I do believe that the fractional reserve banking is a superior system to any kind of fixed system of exchange like the gold standard. I'm a socialist. I understand that this is a socialist concept of currency. I support it because it is a socialist concept of currency. I also support a lender of last resort. I understand that the bailouts were, in fact, loans. I believe that money can and should be printed at whatever volume is necessary to bring the economy to full employment. Further, I realize that there's really no such thing as debt. It's just a imaginary construct. A social construct, even. So, I don't have any of these right-wing economic ideas, and as such, I have little point of identification with the economic program on the right. So what do I think about the Tea Party? No thank you. Okay? That said, I'm also a classical liberal on social issues, and I understand that I may be confusing to a lot on the modern left as a result of that. But I'm actually closer to a traditional concept of leftism than the modern left is. And when I attack the left as authoritarian, I tend to do it from the left. That is, I tend to go after what passes as quote-unquote liberalism nowadays. And it's straight from Elizabeth Warren, who's, a centrist by any... I would argue that Elizabeth Warren is a... Sorry, the battery went out there. When I attack the left as authoritarian, I tend to do it from the left. That is, I tend to go after what passes as quote-unquote liberalism nowadays. That's from Elizabeth Warren, who I would actually argue is a right-wing liberal. Right through the Tumblr types, as a lot of confused conservatives. Okay, there's nothing liberal about the social justice warriors. It's just a postmodern spin on religion, and dangerous for all the same reasons. We live in a reality where a defined left does not exist. Okay? Rather, we are presented with various strains of conservatism and told that they are liberalism and socialism, respectively. I reject all of this, so you cannot place me on your spectrum as you understand it. But I am clear where I stand in a broader spectrum. I am an anarchist, or communist, in the tradition of Bakunin, Kropotkin, Oscar Wilde, Malatesta, and more recently Noam Chomsky. I tend to lean Marxist, it's actually mostly from Engels, on economic matters, and liberal from people like J.S. Mill on social matters. These are old-fashioned perspectives that most people have jettisoned in favor of some concept of authoritarian thinking, to the point that I'm broadly misunderstood most of the time. The absolute rejection of authoritarian thinking is something that is not broadly embraced by the left anymore. It used to be. So when I come down on a lot of issues, it's often in a way that the left wouldn't understand anymore, because it's from a libertarian or anarchist perspective. Whereas the left nowadays is almost solely authoritarian Marxist, when it's even the left at all. There's also a very large pseudo-left, right, which I've tried to explain a little bit. They're not leftist at all. They're old-fashioned Christian conservatives, or even market fundamentalists that don't recognize themselves as the right, because the contemporary right has gone so far out that it has converted. By nature of the relative nature of the political spectrum, it's converted what used to be or should be considered a moderate right into, by some calculations, an activist left. I would consider Elizabeth Warren to be a moderate conservative or a right-wing liberal. It's very much an overlap there. But in today's spectrum, she's widely seen as about as far left as the spectrum will allow. And what the actual left is just not contemplated, right? But I am a leftist. I'm a very pure one that refuses to be corrupted by conservative concepts of human nature, even when it takes me out into left field. And I mean that legitimately, okay? Not in this relativistic sense that I'm talking of, but even if it does legitimately take me into left field, that's fine. I'll set up camp out there, and you'll leave me there. That's okay. But just don't get confused, okay? I am a leftist, even if I ultimately defer to science whenever I can. Just because you don't recognize me as a leftist doesn't mean that I'm not one. What it actually means is that you don't know what the left is. And maybe you don't like the left. That's okay too. I'm not really into trying to tell you what to think, so much as I'm into pleading with you to identify yourself properly. If you're all about, breaking up banks in order to stimulate competition on an open market, then you're not a leftist. And it would be really nice if you stop pretending you are one, right? What you are is a conservative. And if you're all about, trying to tell people what to think, and shut down, expression and freedom of, I don't want to. I don't want to retreat to stale slogans, okay? But if you're all into, preventing people from saying what they want, well, then you're not a leftist either. And it would be really nice if you'd stop pretending that you are. And when I show up and I'm like, actually, I'm kind of opposed to any kind of restriction of speech, because that's what a leftist actually thinks. It would be nice if you'd acknowledge that, right? Instead of trying to, argue that I must be some kind of right-wing extremist because I believe in free speech. It's something that another old leftist that is often misidentified nowadays, who had the pen name of Orwell, might have something to say about, right? The entire spectrum is just totally run roughshod over in all of these backwards terms, massive amounts of newspeak. It's the truth of it. Again, I just request that you place me in the proper place on the spectrum, please. I do not share any of those economic perspectives of the right, and where I do agree with classical liberals, that's the definition of what is academically and historically considered to belong to the left, which is a rejection of authoritarianism. And your whole, authoritarian, Marxist, Foucauldian stuff is right-wing on at least an authoritarian scale, and I would broadly argue more aligned with, Burkean conservatism than any coherent concept of the left. Um, you don't have to agree with me, but let's not be confused, please. Thanks.